This is Nathan Bowman with Draper Inc. Today we're going to cover some of the new features of the motor limit tool for the IntelliFlex I system when connecting directly into an NDC. The first thing that we're going to cover is check network. This is a valuable troubleshooting tool when you get on site if the network is not responding how you think it should. So I'm going to select check network. This menu option gives you a breakdown of every device that is currently reading on the network. For instance, in my scenario, I have 7 total devices, 4 AC motors, 1 single zone switch, 1 2-zone switch, and 1 contact closure interface. In addition to that, directly below the total device count, it tells you network stable. This is giving me confirmation that I have no low voltage issues on the network and everything is communicating harmoniously. If you see anything other than network stable, that means that you have something on the network that is causing a communication issue and it needs to be investigated further. The next new feature that we're going to discuss is device settings. I'm going to use my down arrow to navigate to device settings and then select enter. From here, I have 2 devices on the network that I can configure the settings for, and that is a switch or a contact closure interface. So I'm going to select switch. The menu is loading. Now it populates. I see that I have 2 switches. If you want to identify a switch, you simply use your arrow to move the cursor next to that switch's name. Then you would walk to find the switch, and that switch's LEDs will be illuminating to let you know, hey, I'm the switch that you currently have highlighted. If you want to operate or configure that switch, simply hit enter. Now from here, very similar to a motor, you have the option to rename a switch. I highly recommend this on your larger projects to help you keep things organized. So to do that, I simply highlight rename and hit enter. My switch is currently named switch 18, so I'm going to go ahead and change that. Again, I have it selected. I'm going to hit enter. Now it highlights. Switch is your base name. That is always going to remain the same, and this is going to be universal across the IntelliFlex I platform. So the base name is not going to be configurable. Whatever the control is, that's what the name is going to be. What you have the ability to change is the numerical value and the numerical adder. So I want to change this to switch 15. And in this room I have 2 switches, so I want this to be 15-2 because this is my second switch in the line. So now I change that to 15-2. I'm happy with that. I'm going to use my down arrow, get down to confirm, hit enter. Now at the top of the screen, we can see that my switch is renamed to switch 15-2. Now the next option I have is to configure how the switch operates. So I'm going to navigate down to zone 1. This is just a single zone switch, so it shows zone 1. Here in a moment, I will show you what it looks like if you were working with a 2-zone switch. So zone 1, I'm going to use my down arrow to navigate to and hit enter. And from here, I can see how this switch is configured. This switch is currently configured as a master switch, meaning that it is going to operate any shade that is tied into the network. Its priority is set to normal and its profile is set to normal. So I'm going to go ahead and change this. I do not want this to be a master switch, so I'm going to hit enter. Now I have the option to change this to group 1, 2, or all the way down to 64. These are the same 64 groups that we have available to us when we are configuring our motors and setting groups from our motor limit tool motor configuration screen. So again, reference back to your IntelliFlex I planning sheet if you have any questions. That's where you would want to document all of your shade groupings and things like that for quick and easy reference. So I want this switch to be part of group 1. All right, that has changed from a master switch. This switch now only operates group 1. The priority, I'm going to leave this at normal, but I'm going to discuss the various priority levels with you. Normal is by default. This means that if any other external controller, such as an AV gateway, contact closure interface, is on the network, it will still be able to override the shades even if a wall switch is pressed. If this is changed to low, that means that the wall switch can be overridden from a sun sensor or a lower priority control. Sun sensor, sun automation, something like that. Now, And if I change this to high, that means that this switch has the highest priority, and until the override for this switch is released, nothing will have control of this shade. I recommend only using this for very specific scenarios, such as high importance boardroom meetings, something like that, to where you need to be able to walk up, hit a switch, and have confidence that the shades are not going to move for a set amount of time, no matter what. Outside of a scenario such as that, I would always recommend leaving this at normal so the system operates as it should by default. Then you can also select the profile. So I'm going to hit enter. So by default, the switch is going to show standard. This is just our standard profile for the wall switch, meaning you tap the open or close to get the shade to go full up, full down. If the shade has presets, you tap in between full open and full close. It will go to the closest preset that you have tapped. You have the option to do no presets, meaning the shade will only go full up, full down. You will have the option to have a manual stop in between full up and full down, but there are no presets. No stopping, so the shade will only travel full up and full down. You will not have the ability to stop this shade in between anywhere in between 0 and 100. Those are the profiles for the IntelliFlex I switches. The last menu option in the switch configuration is the override time. By default, every IntelliFlex I single or dual zone wall switch that ships from Draper will come with a 120 minute or 2 hour override time. That is customizable based on customer preference. So to do that, you would simply select override time, hit enter. You can change that to none, meaning that if you're just doing a system with switches, you can leave that to none because nothing else would be out there to override the system. If you have other controls on the network, I do not recommend leaving this at none. And then from there, you can select edit and change it. It will move in single minute increments. So if you want 2 hours, it would be 120 minutes. If you want 1 hour, 60 minutes, so on and so forth. Totally customizable based on customer preference. Okay, so I back out to the switch menu option where I can rename and see the configuration. The last option that you have is to factory reset. Navigate down, hit enter. It's going to ask you to confirm that you want to factory reset this switch. I'm going to hit confirm. Now it takes me back to my device settings menu. All right, as you can see, now that I've done a factory reset on my switch, it populates back as an S1, meaning it's a single zone switch. 635916 is its default name. That switch is now reset back to factory settings. Okay, also on my network, I have a contact closure interface. The device settings is going to be very similar to the switch settings, but it does differ slightly, so I want to go in here and show you this. Going to navigate down to contact closure. I only have one contact closure on the network, so it's showing CCI 1. That's the one I'm going to select by hitting enter. And now it's very similar to the switch. I can opt to rename the CCI by following the same steps previously discussed. What differs here is you now have 3 groups because the contact closure interface has 3 sets of dry contact terminals on the bottom of them, and each set of dry contact terminals can be configured differently. By default, each group will be set up as a master, meaning it will operate every shade on the network until specified otherwise. So I'm going to go into group 1, and I'm going to change this from a master. I'm going to put this back into group 1 that we previously placed that switch into. Again, priority, I'm going to leave it normal for the previously discussed reasons. Profile, I will leave as standard, but I will run through these menu options for you because they differ from the switch. So we have standard, we have Venetian blinds if we're doing one of our custom solution projects with exterior Venetian blinds. We have a toggle that allows you to just toggle the shades up and down. No presets, very similar to our wall switch configuration. Profile with presets, a keyed switch which allows for an emergency override, and then we're back at standard here. Then again, you have the option to set the override time. By default, it will come with 120 minutes. If I want to alter that, I simply hover over it, hit enter, change to edit, and now I have the option to change this in 1 minute increments. If you have any further questions or concerns, please contact Draper Technical Support at 1-800-238-7999 and select option 3.